After the blunder that was 2021's Five Nights at Freddy's security breach, everyone was shocked to get the news that the game's developers, Steelwool, were going to be making a DLC expansion to the original called Ruin. And the most interesting part of all, it was going to be completely free. Now, if you haven't watched my original video on Security Breach, which apparently came out on New Year's Day, goddamn Mark, Mr. Popular over here, the announcement of this DLC being free, I think, made it very clear this wasn't just a shameless attempt to further cash in on the franchise's first big-budget release, but instead an attempt to make good by the fans and, in a way, apologize for how Security Breach came out at launch.
You can't follow me in here, right?
Not that they even needed to. Plenty of fans absolutely loved Security Breach the way it was, which is fine, I can see why someone would. But for me personally, my biggest gripes with it mainly came down to the Pizzaplex being too big for how little direction they give you, not really having much of a direct story, which is important for a game that's over 20 minutes long, the main character being pretty insufferable, and, oh yeah, all this stuff.
We were dealing with Spider-Man, and oh, there he is!
Go, 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 close.
Oh my gosh! Oh my
Oh, what? What? Whoa! Whoa!
So I was cautiously optimistic in seeing if any of this would be addressed in the continuation, especially given the teaser for the game was promising something much darker in tone, with Security Breach receiving the common complaint that for being a horror game, really isn't all that scary. We then proceeded to get, in typical Steelwool fashion, nothing for almost a year. But the full expansion finally released around a week ago at the time of recording this, and what did I think? Well, I tweeted out saying that I simply played it, which apparently translated into me hating it somehow. Then I agreed through a SpongeBob gif that it was kind of boring, and somehow that got twisted into me supporting minors being sent gore. Must have missed that part of the game. Also, in case you were one of the many original comments telling me I probably didn't finish the game, well, you can watch me play the entire thing right now over on my second channel. Go give it a like. Grab a shirt while you're at it too. Link in bio. Okay, for real though. I played through the entire game, clocking in at around 3 hours of total playtime, saw all the endings included, and what did I think? It was okay. A definite improvement over Security Breach, but as a game, it still leaves a lot to be desired. So without further ado, let's get into Ruin, to find out if it manages to redeem the mess that was Security Breach. So I'll start with what most FNAF fans care about. That, of course, being the story. More specifically, the lore. What are the lore implications for this? Who is this The Mimic? And what about this other mysterious character, The Entity? I can't wait to see what happens in this installment of Five Nights at the Freddy's. You can tell Steelwool tried their hardest to go back and retcon everything people didn't like about the original game, mainly being the ending with its revival of William Afton, while still trying to make all of this somewhat cohesive, and I think they went about it in the best way they could have given the situation they put themselves in. And that was through integrating the lore of the books. Now, as someone who not too long ago released a video going over every single book that was out at the time, I could see them, by the end of their Tales of the Pizzaplex series, start to blur the line between the books universe and the games universe, with an indie game developer being tasked with creating those original few FNAF games by Fazbear Entertainment to try and improve their poor public image. Now, given the Herculean task of me trying to read about, 20 or so books within a single month, I hope you understand that by the end of that endeavor, I was a little teeny bit fucking burnt out on reading. So I haven't caught up with any of the ones that have come out since then. I know the Mimic is introduced or at least alluded to within the White Tiger one, but I don't think reading that should be necessary to get any enjoyment out of Ruin's story. Okay, before you get mad at me about that, I want to ask how many of you actually read the book. Okay, now how many of you have just watched a video of some guy recapping what happened so you don't need to read it yourself? Yeah, that's what I thought. I think your game should be able to integrate all this lore you can only get from other media, without it being mandatory for you to actually have to engage with that media. All you gotta do is give a quick rundown to catch people up to speed, while still telling your own story with a start, middle, and end. And does Ruin accomplish this? In the most bare minimum way, yes. And believe me, I'm saying that as a positive. Like, that's not even to say it's bad. More so that you can tell they were stretched for time working on this thing, and so my biggest issue with it is that they set up all this cool stuff, only to not really do anything with it until the last 5 minutes of gameplay, and it ends before it feels like it even got the chance to start. We play as new girl Cassie, who's been called to the long-abandoned Pizzaplex by the main character of the last game, Gregory, to save him from being trapped underneath the place. One of the main questions I had going in was, which security breach ending were they gonna continue from? The original had like 8 different endings, with varying degrees of importance. And while you would assume that the real ending has to be the secret one where you travel all the way down to under the Pizzaplex and come face to face with the reincarnation of William Afton, who's been trapped inside the pizzeria from FNAF 6, no. Instead, it's the one where you're tasked with finding all the Princess Quest arcade games around the place and beating them, which snaps Vanny out of the spell she had been under from Glitch Trap, with her, Gregory, and the head of Freddy escaping the place to live on together as a little fine family kind of thing. As we can see one of the arcade machines being destroyed with a sword going through it, and also that Freddy, who later attacks you, is missing his head, right where he was destroyed in that ending. Also, you can find hidden little comic books of all the other endings except for that one, which implies they were just made up by Gregory, I guess. So you're responsible for Burn Trap? Typical. At first, I wasn't sure how I felt about them confirming which ending was canon. Kinda has that Shadow the Hedgehog issue where they give you all these alternate endings only to immediately follow it up with, okay, but no, for real, this is the right one. I guess I can't help but wonder why go through all the effort of developing 8 underwhelming endings when you could have just, I don't know, put all that time into making one satisfying one? But I get it, you gotta set up some artificial mystery as to which is the real one. Don't worry, I understand. Either way, as you enter and explore the ruins of the pizzeria, wait a minute, you get continuously sent further and further into the depths of the Pizzaplex, winding up in Monty Golf, where you find a security bot who gives you a mask, which may look a little familiar to those who played Help Wanted, or at least watched Markiplier play Help Wanted.
Oh, fucking hi!
This was used as a teaser to Security Breach, even being prominently featured in its first trailer, only to not appear in the final game as far as I'm aware. Wearing the mask allows you to see this glitchy vaporwave version of the world around you, which mainly lets you walk through objects that would otherwise prevent you from progressing. However, you soon encounter this thing known by fans as the Entity. I'm not sure if that's the official name or not, but knowing this series, it'll probably be adopted as the real name anyway. From there, the story kind of takes a backseat. It's just a case of you traveling through the place, disabling all the security nodes in an attempt to free Gregory, encountering all 4 Glamrock animatronics along the way. By the time you get to the end, we see Roxy come and attack you, before realizing you're not Gregory and actually then apologizes. We see that she, at least, hasn't been completely taken over by whatever is causing the other animatronics to act out so much. She actually remembers Cassie had a party there, which makes it all the more heartbreaking when you have to then use your Faz Wrench to disable her security, killing her in the process, until the next scene where she shows up again. I don't know if there's a story reason as to why she's up and running again, but either way, I think it removes a lot of that emotional tension they tried to create here, especially when she's only dead for like 10 minutes of gameplay. Oh well. You continue to travel deeper and deeper into the place, until you wind up in the same area Burn Trap was in the first game's secret ending, where you can finally save Gregory.
You're not Gregory. What are you?
I'm Gregory.
Whoa! Turns out that was the mimic disguising its voice to sound like Gregory the entire time. Boy, I sure hope Cassie gets murdered for that blunder. Oh, sweet. I recently found out that people think that quote I say all the time is real and not just a Simpsons reference, God help me. Turns out Gregory and Vanny were the ones who installed that entity thing to prevent the mimic from escaping, and that's why it was after you the whole time. Well, it's a good thing we know this now and Gregory is gonna help us escape.
But we can't risk being followed. I'm sorry.
Gregory? No!
Hold Edith skip! I think the shock of this ending would have been a lot more impactful if Elevator Falls wasn't shown on screen like 5 seconds too early. It's left up in the dark as to whether or not Cassie actually dies here, as after a while you can hear Roxy calling her name, so who knows. All I know is, kinda stops as soon as it feels like it's starting. Running away from a very slow-moving mimic isn't all that engaging. Kinda just feels like everything is up in the air throughout the entire game, you're finally told what's going on. Dead. Credits roll. If you want to find out more about the Mimic, then the main way you're going to do that is through the Candy Cadet, who after feeding enough Faz tokens will tell you the story of a boy and mother who lived in a house in the woods, with the mother locking a monster in the basement. Over time, the monster was able to learn from its surroundings, listening to the mother sing to her child, and while the mother was out one day and the boy was home alone, it started to sing, luring the boy into the basement to kill him. And honestly, I think this explanation is great. Doesn't explicitly say what the mimic is, but it shows you what its deal is, how it enacts its plans. I'm glad there's at least something here that tells you what it's capable of without leaving all that to the books. But okay, sure, this ending is a little underwhelming. I wish there were more. So let's check out one of the other endings to see what it elaborates on. So you're walking down the same path, but instead of going forward, you turn around at a certain point, click on a Freddy standee, and you're met with...
Yes, I'm okay. I found a spot to hide.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, so this is clearly an illusion, which can be seen by Cassie's panicked breathing, the glitch effect, and the fact that the balloons cast a drop shadow on the clouds. I think this is meant to show Cassie being shown her most desired outcome, being with her friends and helping for some reason, before being killed by the mimic. Okay, whatever, it's neat I suppose. Okay, now we get the final ending, which you unlock by checking out secret cameras present throughout the entire game. When running away during the ending, you can now take this secret doorway into a scooping room like the one in Sister Location, luring the mimic inside, who is also donned a creepy animal costume here. I think he was trying to look like Gregory or something, before being scooped as you watch its defeated body lying on the ground. And then it fades to black. So, the real Gregory doesn't chime in at all to give you the explanation or anything? I don't know, I think if you're gonna have all these alternate endings in your game, you should at least try and make sure they're at least somewhat satisfying. Like FNAF 3 has 3 endings, a good one, a bad one, and a secret one. But the bad one still gives you the reward of seeing William try and escape the kid's souls in the Springtrap suit before getting killed. You still get a ending. The good one just shows you releasing the souls of the kids of the original FNAF animatronics, with Golden Freddy in the back still being lit as their soul has yet to be put to rest, setting up future stuff. And the final ending after doing everything shows the Fazbear Frights attraction being burnt down. But if you brighten the image up, you see a tease that Springtrap survived, to be brought back in another game. Each one of these endings feels satisfying on their own, but for Ruin, I feel like only really the normal and Scooper ending work when viewed together, not on their own. I don't know, I guess I'm just sick of this alternate ending stuff in the first place. Just have a good and a bad ending, what's wrong with that? Gives you more time to flesh them out rather than a million undercooked ones. I know I'm giving a lot of complaints for this story, but don't get me wrong, I like it. The idea that you're unknowingly helping out the villain the entire time and the thing chasing you all along was actually good is a neat twist. Predictable as fuck, I'm sure everybody went into this game knowing that that wasn't actually the real Gregory seeking our help, but it works. And while the mimic comes off as compensating for how much people hated Burntrap in the original, you know, this allows them to imply, well, that wasn't really William Afton, it was just the mimic. Which is a cheap band-aid, sure. But hey, it works in context of the game and broadens the future of the franchise to not just continue focusing on William. I like all that stuff a lot, along with us getting to see what state the pizzeria was left in, but I don't know, I just couldn't help but be super disappointed by the ending. But then again, I have to remember, this is a free 2-hour experience meant to give you a bit of closure to the Glamrock stuff, while setting you up for what's to come in the future, so I understand I was probably expecting too much. I guess I just wanted to be more engaged with the story, considering how tedious and not all that interesting the gameplay is. Now, Beast's Security Breach was a simple stealth game. Wasn't the worst thing in the world, but I think it was really set back by the lack of any real variety, considering they built their entire thing around roaming AI robots, but didn't have the time to make sure said AI was actually polished. And so it resulted in this frustrating experience, where every segment felt completely random as to how the animatronics would react to you. Sometimes they'd pose no threat whatsoever, and other times they'd stand right outside where you're hiding and not move for the absolute life of them. So with all that, I was happy to see Ruin take a much more linear approach to its design. For example, instead of endlessly roaming around the structures of the daycare searching for generators, you follow a much more straightforward path to activate those same generators, with arrows eating you if you need them. I don't mind it being easier because the way it was before, simply put, wasn't fun. So in that regard, I appreciate the more haunted house-like structure to it. You're walking down a path and BAM! Jump scare. You continue walking down and BAM! Another jump scare. And I love the visual change of you delving further and further into the ruins of the place. The aesthetic and atmosphere here is pretty top-notch, even if it is subject to the same occasional visual glitches, like when you reboot Sun and Moon, the textures on the back of his head always fuck up for some reason, but that's not a big deal, I'm aware. Just kinda ruins the immersion a tad. One thing I did wish for is that the gameplay variety reflected all those different locations you visit, because for the entire adventure you're doing one of two things. Like I said, you have this Faz wrench, which you can use on these specific boxes to open doors, operate fucking forklifts, anything. And the only requirement is for you to make sure each of these little wire things are in the correct area at the same time. That's it. If you've beaten one, you've beaten them all. There are a couple later that become a little trickier, but it's just a case of spending an extra 10 seconds on it. Now this would be fine as a fun little gimmick to use every now and then, but no, this is one of the 2 things you're only ever doing in this game, and because of its length, I can't really say it ever gets repetitive, but it does reach the point of me questioning why it's even here if it's not challenging or fun, it's just busy work. The second aspect is a little better, and it revolves around that vanity mask that sends you into this other plane, with you having to take down these security nodes by following the red line connected to these other objects and disabling them. The vanity mask makes it so other animatronics can't see you, although I would recommend not getting too close either way as their hitboxes are fucking giant. So the main threat while wearing it comes from the entity. It took me a bit to understand this because if you're not looking in the right direction, they'll play this horror sting sound without you even seeing what's going on. But basically, if you wear the mask for too long, the entity appears and slowly gets closer and closer to you. And if it jump scares you, I think it just alerts all the other animatronics to your location, so you can't wear it forever. But you can just like take it off for 5 seconds and put it back on as far as I'm aware. If not, then I didn't notice anything different. The game is so short that some of these mechanics I wasn't even aware of until after I already finished it. It's one of those games where you don't really even need to know how everything works and can simply power your way through and hope that one time the AI decides to be nice to you. But it's basically just a game of trying your best to follow the lines in the darkness to find what you're looking for, while balancing not being attacked by the animatronics or the entity. And I think this was without a doubt the most engaging part of the game, even if it peaks a little early. The one in that area where you fight Monty in the original game was super cool, opening all these strange portal things that send you off to different parts of the map. I like that stuff a lot, but sadly they don't do much to expand upon that for the rest of the game. The only other mechanic really is one where you lure the animatronics using the intercom and the cameras. Wow, actually using the cameras for something gameplay related? Who would have guessed? Not Security Breach. Sadly, however, it's pretty basic. You're just slowly luring Roxy into breaking down doors so you can progress, then she disappears until the next time you need to do that. The only time I felt truly engaged with Ruin was during the Music Man segment, where they actually combined the note disabling and the luring animatronics mechanics together, with you having to make them flock somewhere else so you can rush in and quickly disable it. Although this one part here I felt was a little bugged. There were like 4 different times I'd walk up to the camera and the Music Man would get in my radius and kill me while I was trying to lure them. But finally, I just walked up to it again and they decided to not come after me one time, thanks. Overall, the gameplay works for how short it is. But I hope if they continue these larger free-roaming FNAF games, they take more time to give you a variety of engaging mechanics instead of a couple alright ones repeated ad nauseum. And all of that would be fine if it were able to succeed at one simple thing: being a good horror experience. And so compared to Security Breach, is it scary? Well, it's scarier, I'll say that much. Again, the visuals here carry this whole experience. I love how the animatronics look. The Mimic and Entity look amazing too, I love their designs. And the sound mixing does an excellent job at enhancing all of this, even if sometimes it feels like it's trying to make things seem a lot cooler than it really is. Like when Freddy or the Mimic are chasing you, it feels like they're right up next to you, only to turn around and see them a mile away. But even if I find the gameplay here to be a bit boring, watching my reaction with my playthrough showed me that for a good majority of this thing, I was thoroughly engaged due to how much tension they built up through visuals and sound. And you're going from location to location so quickly that it allows things to always be at least somewhat interesting. And because of that, I think it's pretty safe to call Ruin a vast improvement over Security Breach. Still nothing groundbreaking. I don't think I'd put this anywhere near my top 5 FNAF games. I think Help Wanted still takes the cake in that regard, and I'm extremely excited for the sequel coming out soon. But Ruin does a pretty stellar job at showing me how Security Breach could have been good. It may not redeem it, I don't think it suddenly makes this package worth $40 unless you're already a huge fan of the series, but I think it does highlight the advantages of the franchise moving away from that sit and defend kind of gameplay style. I'm also just excited that they're doing something new. That circus shit coming soon? That looks interesting. I'm hoping they'll lean into that old creepy mascot costume thing they teased at the end of this one. Security Breach left me incredibly weary of where this franchise was headed, but Ruin shows me that Steelwool were able to recognize what worked about it, what didn't, and wanted to offer a fun little free experience for fans as a kinda sign of their course correction in a way. And with that and the upcoming release of the movie, which I cannot wait for, I think there's never been a better time to be a fan of the series. Yeah. Bet you weren't expecting me to say that, given my apparent harsh criticism I gave on Twitter that I played it. I think I'm just gonna stop talking altogether. Good night.